Some say love is terrifying. For these people, their Valentine's Day turned into a real-life horror story. Picture this. The year is 2024, and a couple decides to escape the city's hustle and bustle for Valentine's Day. They opt for a secluded cabin deep in the heart of the woods, a place where they could enjoy each other's company in peace and quiet. Their hearts fluttered with the thrill of the romantic getaway, their smiles as bright as the full moon overhead. As they settled into the rustic charm of the cabin, with the crackling fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls, they noticed peculiar things. Objects seemed to have a life of their own, moving from their original places. A book would shift slightly on the table, a chair would creak as if someone had just stood up from it. At first, they brushed it off as the wind or the old creaky house settling. But as the evening progressed, the strange occurrences became impossible to ignore. The air grew cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes your breath visible in the air. A creeping sense of unease filled the room, wrapping around them like the shadows at the corners of the cabin. And then they heard it, a low guttural growl echoing through the silence. It wasn't an animal, it was something else, something sinister. The cabin, once a beacon of romantic solitude, now felt oppressive, the walls closing in around them. They were not alone. The couple, once bubbling with the joy of their romantic getaway, now clung to each other in sheer terror. They had hoped for a Valentine's Day to remember, and that's exactly what they got, but not in the way they had imagined. In the face of the unknown, their Valentine's Day turned from a romantic escapade to a chilling tale of horror. They had come in search of love, but what they found was a terrifying entity that turned their romantic dream into a nightmare. Their romantic getaway turned into a nightmare they would never forget. Sometimes love can turn into obsession, and obsession can turn deadly. So begins the chilling tale of a woman who found herself the object of unwanted attention one fateful Valentine's Day. In lieu of the usual heartwarming declarations of love, she found her mailbox filled with an anonymous Valentine's Day card. But there were no sweet nothings here, only veiled threats, chilling in their implication. A shiver ran down her spine as she read the menacing words, her heart pounding in her chest. Who could have sent this, she wondered, a knot of fear tightening in her stomach. Days turned into weeks, and each one brought a new card. Each message was more alarming than the last, the words no longer veiled but openly threatening. Her world, once filled with the normalcy of everyday life, was now tainted with a growing sense of dread. Each knock, each ring of the doorbell, each shadow in the corner of her eye seemed to hold the promise of danger. She reported the threats to the police, but without a name, an address, or any hint of the sender's identity, there was little they could do. They advised her to stay vigilant, to look out for anything unusual. But when every day was filled with the unusual, how could she discern the truly dangerous? The climax of this chilling tale came one Valentine's Day when she received a card not in her mailbox but on her doorstep. The card was the same as the ones before, filled with threats. But this time, there was a name signed at the bottom. Her heart stopped as she recognized the name. It was a close friend, someone she had trusted, someone she had never suspected. The realization hit her like a cold wave, the betrayal cutting deep. The police were called, arrests were made, and the threat was finally neutralized. But the memory of that Valentine's Day, the fear, the dread, the betrayal, lingered on. An admirer from afar turned her Valentine's Day into an experience filled with dread and terror. A chilling reminder that sometimes love can turn into obsession, and obsession can turn deadly. Valentine's Day, a day of love, but for some it's a day of bloodshed. A day that's typically marked by roses and chocolates took a violent turn in 1929 in the heart of Chicago. This was the day of the infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre, a chilling event that sent shockwaves through the city and the nation. On this fateful day, 7 members of Chicago's North Side gang were brutally murdered in broad daylight. The setting was a garage at 2122 North Clark Street, an unassuming location that would soon become the scene of a gruesome spectacle. The victims were lined up against a wall, their backs turned, unsuspecting of the horror that was about to unfold. Without warning, they were sprayed with a hail of bullets, their lives snuffed out in a brutal instant. When the bodies were discovered, the city was thrown into a state of shock. The garage had transformed into a macabre tableau, a stark contrast to the cheery red hearts and sweet sentiments that adorned storefronts and homes across the city. The gruesome scene was a grim reminder of the violent underbelly that lurked beneath the surface of the city's glittering facade. The news of the massacre spread like wildfire, sparking fear and outrage. Who could commit such a heinous act? The city was on edge and the authorities were under immense pressure to solve the case. Suspicions quickly fell on the rival South Side gang, led by the notorious Al Capone. However, despite intensive investigations and widespread speculation, no one was ever brought to justice for the crime. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre remains one of the most infamous, unsolved crimes in American history. As we delve into the dark side of Valentine's Day, we're reminded that not all stories of this day are filled with love and joy. For the city of Chicago in 1929, Valentine's Day was marked not by affectionate exchanges, but by a shocking act of violence. A day meant for love turned into one of the most notorious massacres in history. Love transcends death, or so it seems in this chilling tale. Picture a man, we'll call him John, living a quiet, solitary life after the untimely passing of his beloved wife. A couple of years into his lonely existence, Valentine's Day rolls around. A day that was once filled with joy and love, now only a bitter reminder of what he's lost. Imagine his surprise when he finds a Valentine's Day card in his mailbox, the envelope bearing his name in handwriting eerily similar to his deceased wife's. His heart skips a beat, his breath catches in his throat. He opens the card, revealing a heartfelt message that could have only come from his late wife. The words were her words, the sentiments her sentiments. Fear and confusion set in. Was this some cruel joke, or was his grief playing tricks on him? John decides he has to get to the bottom of this. He starts by asking friends and family, but they are just as baffled as he is. He turns to the police, but without any evidence of foul play, they can't help him. Undeterred, John decides to take matters into his own hands. His investigation leads him to the local post office. He inquires about the letter, and the postman, after some hesitation, reveals a chilling fact. The Valentine's Day card had been posted locally, but the handwriting perfectly matched that of his late wife, right down to the unique way she dotted her I's. The revelation sends a shiver down John's spine. Was this a ghostly message from beyond the grave? Or was someone playing a cruel trick on him? The mystery remains unsolved, leaving John in a state of perpetual unease. As we wrap up this eerie tale, we are left with a haunting thought. Could love be so strong that it reaches out from beyond the grave? Or was it a phantom, a figment of a grieving man's imagination? His Valentine's Day was haunted by a love that refused to die. These stories remind us that love, like everything else, has a dark side. As we delve into the eerie depths of Valentine's Day, we're met with tales that are far from the conventional heart-shaped chocolates and roses. Each story we've explored is a stark reminder of how love's sweet facade can sometimes mask a much darker reality. Our journey began with A Valentine's Day to Remember, a chilling tale that took us through the labyrinth of a love turned sour, a relationship that ended not in whispered sweet nothings, but in whispers of fear and dread. Then, we shifted our gaze to The Unwanted Admirer. Here, we saw love twisted into an obsessive nightmare, a story laced with suspense that had us on the edge of our seats, our hearts pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock. Our third tale, The Valentine's Day Massacre, painted a grim picture of love's darkest corners. It was a story that left us shocked and horrified, a stark reminder that even on the most romantic day of the year, love can still lead to devastating consequences. Finally, we encountered The Phantom Valentine. This tale, a spectral story of love beyond the grave, sent shivers down our spines, proving that even death cannot extinguish the flames of passion. In these narratives, we've seen how the typical image of Valentine's Day, one of love, happiness, and unity, can be turned on its head. We've witnessed the interplay of fear, dread, suspense, and shock, emotions that are usually reserved for Halloween, creep into the heart of the most romantic day of the year. These stories serve as a reminder that love, while beautiful, can also harbor a terrifying power. They remind us that beneath the surface of every love story, there might lie an undercurrent of darkness, a chilling twist waiting to be discovered. On Valentine's Day, remember to celebrate love, but also be aware of its potential to terrify.